It's human nature to want to live. When you know your life is at stake, any minute you could be killed. You lived from minute to minute and prayed a lot and hoped that nothing will happen to you. I have dedicated my life to end this hatred. When we educate, we can prevent, and then we will ultimately prevail. This is a message to all your students. It's possible to let tragedy or trauma become a reason to stop living. But it's also possible to live through extreme circumstances and commit to a life that has meaning, a life that matters. My dear departed one, all 6 million are crying out to the world in a single word. Zachor, remember us, we were here.
That's an amazing video, a passionate one as well. And I know that Ben is somebody who's been really putting his message out across the world to a whole range of people. And today we're privileged to share that with the global classroom, to all of you out there. He's so proactive in 2019 that Ben even engaged with BMG Sound Lab in Los Angeles and met with some of the world's leading songwriters in there to produce a song called Choose Love. And I recommend you go and find that. Go and find that on Spotify, Apple, etc., or a streaming service and listen to it, because Ben's story changes people's lives. So I'm very pleased to say, first of all, Ben, how are you, and welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Shaw.
So I've got some questions for you here, Ben, to go through. And I know you're going to spend some time after this in a seminar with some children as well. So thank you for your time. And it's a great privilege to have you here. Now, when I watched your video, it opened with saying that it's human nature to want to live. And now you endured some of the most horrific treatment and persecution. And I've read your book, and it's an amazing book. And in your book, you write about the liberation, and you describe yourself, the Jewish prisoners, as the walking dead. We could barely breathe, let alone walk and smile. And I think in a question here, I find it hard to understand, how did you find the strength and will to survive that?
I don't know how I found the strength. I always had this feeling that I will survive it. Ben, I always talk to myself in a way, if you behave and do everything you're told and you do it the best you can, perhaps you'll have a chance to survive this. And as it turned out, I survived, but just barely. When I was liberated, I passed out, and I was in coma for 2 months. And I woke up in a sanitarium. Actually, it was a
monastery.
Cloister. The monks gave up one building to rehabilitate into a hospital. So that's where I woke up 2 months after liberation. So to answer your question, I have no idea how I survived.
Well, I mean, thank you.
Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Shaw.
No, carry on, if you will.
I think it was God's will that I survived. And I asked myself the same question. How come the whole family, out of 7 members, only I and my sister survived? Why?
Talk louder.
Why? So the answer to that is, I believe that God needed a witness, someone who can talk about the Holocaust. And I dedicated my last 25 years to do just that. I go around and talk about it to schools and colleges. I travel all over the world just to keep this world from acquiring amnesia. I'm doing my best, but I know what's coming in the future, and I know that I won't be around here forever. So who is going to pick up that important message that we did have a Holocaust? Most people don't want to believe it. And some of the people minimize it, but I was there and I know what happened. And every word is true. Yes, it was 6 million, and it wasn't just a few, and it wasn't the fault of the Jewish people. It wasn't the fault of anyone else. It was Nazism, hatred. Hitler installed the hatred into human beings. And that hatred has to stop, because Hitler and the Nazis did not start with killing. They started with hate, propaganda, and this is what it leads to. And I have so much to tell the youngsters of today. There are so many ways that we have to stop the hatred. When you bully someone in school, that person who was bullied will never forget. He'll never forget or forgive you. And God forbid, if that person's life is not successful, he'll blame you because you bullied him. It's part of hatred that has to stop. And we don't know what this person is going to do. If you hate enough, it's easy to kill. The Nazis have showed it. How can they kill women, children, babies, throw them alive into flames, into fiery pits, which I witnessed in Auschwitz? How is that possible? But it's all possible, I guess, if you hate enough, because the German people were highly educated people. It's not like, they didn't have the education. They were cultured, educated people. And how could they do this and then go home and meet their own family and children after they killed dozens of children because they were born Jewish? That's a big crime. You can't be born to a Jewish family. If you are, you have no right to live, according to the Nazis. And that was Hitler's idea.
Ben, I think I'm listening to you right now, and I'll be honest with you, it's really powerful, the words you're speaking. I'm almost not wanting to talk to you and ask further questions. What you're saying is amazing. And you mentioned you want to try and reach people. We're doing the same thing, definitely. We want to echo your message around the world. Could you perhaps, you talk about the idea in your book called Living a Life That Matters. And, we also would advise that anyone goes to the website of zacharlearn.com to understand more about this. Would you share with us, perhaps, while you're here now, live around the world, what it was like to be in these camps that you went through, all four of them?
Pick your head up. Okay, if I have a little time, I would like to tell you a little bit about my life. I don't know, Mr. Shaw, do I have enough time? Give me...
You got a few minutes, certainly, go for it.
I'll go for it. Well, I come from a wonderful family of 7. And out of the family of 7 today, only I and my sister survived. My sister Lola passed away of natural causes. She was in her mid-90s. She had a good life after the Holocaust. But we lived in Krakow in a beautiful building on a major thoroughfare, and our apartment was on the ground floor, and there was another apartment with other Jewish family in the same building. There were 6 apartments and 2 of us were Jewish. So it was early in the morning, the whole building started to shake, and I ran to the window to see what happened. I saw tanks were rolling down, and following the tanks, there were half-tracks, and every few steps, a soldier would jump out of the half-track. He would get on the sidewalk, and this is how they occupied the city, Krakow. There was no fighting. Following the half-tracks, there was the Wehrmacht, the foot soldier with their shiny black boots and their goose steps. It was quite impressionable for a 11-year-old. I wasn't even 11. I was just 1 month shy of 11. But we had no idea what to expect. I imagine my parents may have known something because Kristallnacht happened 1 year earlier. So if my parents knew something, they wouldn't tell us kids, but they did call us into the dining room, set us down at the table. He said, children, from this point on, there's no more misbehaving. You have to behave, you have to listen, and don't counteract or anything. You are like grown-ups from this moment on. And things started to happen, but I don't have time enough to explain all of the ordinances that they came out with, constantly making it worse and worse. And finally, there was a new ordinance that we had to leave Krakow or go into a ghetto. They gave us a choice only one time. And we decided we are going to leave Krakow. Now, we're going to that community, which we were there about 1 year's time. My sister Lola marries Michael in that community, and they move out from our house into a duplex. The owner of the duplex, the other side, was the mayor of that community. The community name was Nepalomice. Nepalomice was a nice town. Anyway, one day, the mayor tells my sister and my brother-in-law, says, Michael, Lola, save yourselves. Something is going to happen here tonight or tomorrow. And that night, my brother-in-law hired a wagon with a driver, a horse and buggy. In the middle of the night, with whatever we could carry, we put it on there and we left. Now, the only place we can go was a city called Bochnia. Bochnia was a mid-sized city, and they did have a ghetto. That meant we had to go inside the ghetto. I don't have enough time to explain life inside the ghetto, but believe me, it was something unbelievable, unbelievable. And how I survived this and finally was able to escape the ghetto is a story in itself, and I don't have the time to tell, but our whole family was able to escape the ghetto and live outside the ghetto. And we found a truck driver and we hired him. He was a coal truck driver hauling coal. We asked him to make the coal truck into double-decker, where there'll be coal on top, and between the coal and the chassis, there was room for 10 people to lay like sardines, which we did. And eventually he took us to the border of Czechoslovakia, and from Czechoslovakia, we had to cross the border. That wasn't so easy. It was a lot of how we can bypass the guards with their dogs and cross the border is a story in itself. And I had my little brother with me. He was about 9 years old at the time, and maybe only 8. And was in the middle of the night at 3 a.m. and finally we crossed the border. We slid down a mountain and I was holding his hand, and there was a plateau on the bottom and it was pitch black. We couldn't even see our hands. And we were now in Czechoslovakia. All of a sudden somebody gives me a pat on my back, and I almost jumped out of my skin. It's so black you can't even see your hand in front of you. Who is it? And he says, Bainish. He called me by my names that my parents and my siblings were calling me, instead of calling me Benek or at that time, or Ben. So he says, I'm your mother's brother, your uncle Bela, and I'm going to take you across from here to Hungary. In Hungary, I had my older sister because my mother's side of the family came from Hungary. Anyway, a town called Munkács. And we crossed the border, we wound up in Budapest. And in Budapest, I met my sister Lola, who also, she and I both crossed. She crossed earlier. And now we took a train to Munkács. In Munkács, we found the whole family. They were very happy to see us. Anyway, to tell the whole story from this point on, they finally, the Nazis came in, and a year later, actually it was only about 5 months later from the time that we arrived to Hungary, and the Nazis just marched in like they were invited guests. And within, strange, because when they came in, they knew every Jewish person. They knew their names, they knew their education, they knew their businesses. How? We didn't have these computers in those days. IBM had punch cards that they would sell these punch cards to anyone who would pay. Now, IBM doesn't deny it, but they tell us they had no idea for what purpose they're going to use it. And this is what they told us. You're going to be relocated to Germany and take along all your valuables that you can carry, leave everything else behind. And they started to march us out. Anyway, they put us in these cattle cars and we wound up in Auschwitz. Life in Auschwitz, I can't even explain it. It would take me over an hour to tell the whole story. But all I can tell you is that eventually we were moved out of Auschwitz into a labor camp. It was a rock quarry where, as they dynamited the mountain and the boulders came down, it was our job with sledgehammers to break it down to manageable pieces, throw it into mining carts, run it down the hill to the grinding machines to make gravel out of it, then push it back up. It was very hard labor work. And then every day as we came home, when we came into the
I don't think you have time.
into the yard, they would line us up in rows of 5, and they would count us. One day we came home, they lined us up rows of 5, and they counted and counted and counted, and they wouldn't dismiss us. And the commandant comes down with his Fräulein, his girlfriend. He says, I'm going to teach die Schweinhund a lesson so they'll never forget. He's going to teach us a lesson so we will never forget. What happened? 3 inmates escaped, and because of this, he orders his henchmen to pick out every 10th person in line to receive 25 lashes. And while they're doing this, and they're counting and pulling out every 10th person, my uncle was in front of me. I can see he would be at 10, so I pushed him behind me, and I took his place, and I became a number 10. They put us all in the yard. They brought down bundles of hardwood stakes about 2.5 feet long, 1 by 1 inch hardwood stakes. And they also brought down a sawhorse. A sawhorse, I hope everyone knows what a sawhorse looks like. It's 2 sawhorses, you put a log of wood and you can cut it. So now you know. It's like a tripod, a triangle. And this is what he ordered us. He ordered us to tiptoe and put our knees inside the opening of the sawhorse, bend over, but your stomach cannot touch the wood, the 2x4. One man would pull your trousers and the other one was doing the hitting, and you had to count out loud. You had to count out loud. 1, 2, 3, 5. The first person came up. He, of course, by the way, the heels cannot touch the ground. You had to tiptoe, put in your knees under and bend over without touching the 2x4. It was almost impossible. The first man fell. He couldn't do it. He kept repeating himself. Finally, he fell. The commandant goes over, pulls out the revolver, and shoots him right in the head. His girlfriend walks over to him and gives him a hug and a kiss, like he just performed some kind of a heroic act. Then number 2 went up, and I was number 4. Number 2 the same way. He miscounted, and as you miscount, you start all over again. And he kept doing it. Finally, he fell. He fell. The commandant goes over, kicks him in the face, get up, and he couldn't. He shoots him. So we have 2. Number 3 was a younger man, and after he made a few mistakes, he was yelling out, "Please don't kill me, have mercy on me." So as he said that, the commandant says, "Okay, then stand up, come over here and face me." The poor guy stood up, made a few steps, and his knees gave up, and he fell. As he fell, the commandant goes over and shoots him. We have 3 dead bodies. Ben Lesser is number 4. I was probably the youngest in the camp at that point. I was only close to 16, 15, 3/4, something like that. So I remember going up to that sawhorse and talking to myself. I says, "Ben, this is it. You want to live another hour? No mistakes. You have to do exactly what you told." I went over, I tiptoed, I put in my knee into the opening. I bent over without touching the 2x4. One man is pulling my trousers and the other one is hitting. And I count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, finally 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 25. I made it. When I made it, then you can hear a pin drop in the whole camp because no one believed that anyone will survive this. Now the man who was holding my trousers tight says to me in Yiddish, "Go over and thank the commandant." I stand up, blood is running down my trousers. I'm walking over to him, I salute him, and I said, Dankeschön, Herr Kommandant. When he hears this, he puts his hand on my collar and turns me around facing the number 10s. And he says, now I told you it could be done. If you do it like this, Junge, if you do it like this, young one, you have nothing to worry about. While this is happening, there's a commotion at the gate. They caught those 3 inmates and they were pulling them in. Well, it's a long story, but as they were pulling them in, the commandant saw that, just like a child gets sick of a toy, he told all of us number 10 to go back into the line there, in the line, and those 3 people were hung.
Yeah, but Ben, I think these stories that you're saying there are I mean, I'm listening and I can't sort of stop listening. It's incredible. But I do know that I've got a difficult job on the time management, so bear with me. What I need to tell people right now in a second is that what we're going to do once we finish this session is put you into a seminar room where you're going to have a long time to talk as well, and we're going to post that on YouTube alongside this session. I was almost in tears when you spoke about that, because how do you go up there and stand there and do that? I can't understand it. It's so difficult to comprehend the atrocities that have gone on there, and to get the truth out there, to remember, to not have amnesia is something that we must get right for the whole world. Now, we're going to carry on this discussion in the seminar in a second and move it forward. Can I ask you a question, though, which would be, your life didn't finish in that concentration camp. It didn't end there. You went on from there to achieve an amazing family, a wonderful life, a wonderful wife that you just celebrated an anniversary with as well, and also a successful businessman. Now, you lived through these extreme circumstances and you committed your life to one of meaning and one of purpose. Now, there are children around the world, millions of teenagers, young people, they're going to hear this now and they'll watch the session after this. What would your message be at the final part of our session now to those people that you would give to young people directly around the world today?
Choices.
Well, my message to the kids are to stop the hatred. It's very simple. You have to stop the hatred. We're all God's creations in this world. So why can't we live side by side and appreciate our differences rather than hate them? There is no room for hatred. And this is the biggest message that I have to go get through. Sure, my story is long and I have a great story to tell. How I survived, I don't know. I have no idea how I was able to survive all these years in the camps and in ghettos. But I believe that God needed a witness, and that's why I am going around to schools and colleges talking about it. But I do want to say something to you. Know that that's to the kids, that we all have choices. God gave us a mind and he gave us a right to choose. We can choose to be good, we can choose to be bad. But individuals can't always choose what happens to them. But whether it's a crisis or a calamity, people can choose to either let it ruin their lives or to learn from it and move forward. It's essential to understand the consequences of personal choices. It's possible to let tragedy or trauma become a reason to stop living. But it's also possible to live through extreme circumstances and commit to a life that has meaning, a life that matters.